I'm gonna probably spend more time, and I'm going to think about. I'm gonna remove first the signal serializer from the code there on the project, and then I'm going to think about. It's probably gonna take some time, and it's gonna be kind of annoying to think about how to change the GraphNode3D class. I remember that the reason why I chose Mesh Instance 3D is because it looked like it was easier because it inherits from Geometry Instance 3D. So I don't remember exactly if there is a function or something like that that uh, I'm gonna have to change or something like this. But probably what I'm gonna do is just to, I think I'm gonna do it from the editor first to create. From tutorials, I've seen that people usually create the rigid body 3D class and then they put a collision shape 3D and a mesh instance 3D as children of the rigid body. So what I'm probably gonna do is to change the inheritance from mesh instance 3D to rigid body 3D and then add another uh, property to the GraphNode3D class and then change the functionality. But the annoying part might be the physics because I'm running the Barnsut simulation. So that one I'm not really sure like how I'm gonna do it because they recommend you to not change the position directly because then it affects the physics, but to apply forces instead. So I'm gonna have to. I'm not really sure if I'm gonna be able to do it today, but probably gonna have to change that. I'm just gonna wait to see if it's streaming. Okay. Looks like you can pop up. Hmm. See something. Interesting. Next time I'm gonna do this. So I think that the only thing that I have to do is just remove from here because this was the main thing that was adding the serializer, and then just remove this thing here. Also have to remove, oh maybe this one. This one is this one. Looks like that. I'm also gonna go back to putting the flag there. Probably the way that I'm gonna do it is just to use the flag whenever you connect the signal outside of the nodes constructor. And when you connect from inside, then you don't need to cache the signal because I think even if you cache is probably if you cache is probably worse. But the signal is designed to be able to it's just gonna send a message if you try to emit the signal that or connect the signal that already exists because I tested and that's how it works. So it doesn't break anything. But it's probably better to just connect the ones that you create outside of nodes constructors because the editor and probably the engine as well when they load the scene from the scene file, they're gonna call because they're gonna use memnew to create the node. So they're gonna call the constructor, and then they're gonna run the code inside of the constructor on runtime anyway. So it is cached already. So I'm probably gonna close this. I'm gonna open the editor first on the geometry instance thing. I'm gonna close, or maybe I should do it from here. I think I'm just gonna close everything and then I'll open again. And the main thing that I have to, and I created the things here as well, but it looks like on the rigid body they already have the force. I'm not really sure if I'm using this. I think I didn't use this one. Oh, because I don't remember if I implemented, so I have to see on the Graph3D class. I did implement the thing. But I'm just adding to the forces. And so I'm gonna have to spend some time studying the class and seeing the method, maybe reading the documentation as well. I do think that they have force and velocity here. Apply force. So I'll probably just gonna change there on the Graph3D to use this one instead. And the reason why I think I need to have the rigid body and change the class is because it seems that when you're trying to raycast, it only intersects if you have a rigid body because of the way that the physics server works. So raycasting is just calculating a vector that goes from the camera uh, into the world simulation to see if it hits anything. And the reason why you have to raycast and you can't really just get the position is because the mouse position is into the space, is on the screen space, and the objects on the 3D world are on the world space. So you need to do the projection of the mouse position. And also, I think it's better when you're raycasting because if there is an object in front of the other, then it's only gonna get the one that is on front, I think, in the front. And I realized after a stream, I think I searched for this or I studied, and it looks like the function that I was studying the last time, the thing that they are doing on the translation there is that they're changing from viewport coordinates, which are screen coordinates, if I'm correct, and if I remember correctly, and they're translating to normalized device coordinates, which are the clipping coordinates that think are used on the shaders. Like the final coordinates you get, they go from -1 to 1 for the visualization. So I have to translate from the screen coordinates to the normalized device coordinates, and then from the normalized device coordinates, you get the world camera coordinates, which is different, I think, as well. Oh, so it applies directly on the physics server. So there isn't variable. There aren't variables. That's interesting. So I think I'm probably gonna keep the variables there then. I'm gonna keep the variables and I'm gonna add the force to the variables and then I'm gonna apply force to the body. Because I need to, maybe it doesn't matter. Because it's probably gonna accumulate anyway, so maybe it doesn't matter. So I think I'm probably just gonna apply. So this physics material override, it seems that it is used to, if you want to calculate friction and bounciness, which is just the translation, I think, or how much the body retains kinetic energy when on the impact, like how elastic the body is, I think. I'm probably not going to use that now. Well, the other thing that I'm thinking about doing, which is probably going to take time as well, but I think it's easier. It seems that it's easy to incorporate, but it's going to be hard because I'm going to study. So I think there's two different ways to implement. Is the Jolt physics, which seems that is better than the Godot engine. And the way that you use is just by downloading the source code and then putting the source code on the root of your project, and then you have to change the project settings and then incorporates. But it looks like from the source code here, the other approach is probably to just get the source file. I haven't, that's, so I'm not really sure if it's gonna work, obviously. But it seems that all the code is from the source file here, and it's just classes that they register on class B. So like this is basically the same initialization you would use on a module, but I think that they are using GD extension here. So it's basically the same thing. The only difference would be that you would, if I do this, I'm going to create a module for Jolt, and then I'm going to put the function there, and I'm just going to copy the functions here that register the classes. And it seems that these classes come from the other one. And the other thing you have to do is just change the SC sub or add an SC sub for the to the root, so it compiles the C++ files. But I'm not really sure how it's going to work. So I'm gonna have to, but I think I'm gonna think about this after I change the node class and I figure out how to do the ray tracing, because it's gonna for the simulation that I have there is gonna involve the rigid body, which is gonna involve the physics, so it's gonna be different than the way that I was doing. So it might be worth it to try to implement JOT. So this is the thing that is kind of weird, that you need to add as children array pickable. I think that's the thing. I think that there is a function inside the rigid body 3D as well for doing ray tracing. I forgot to put the timer, so I'll put some time. Maybe it's this one. Get colliding bodies. No, but I think that this is for like when you have two different bodies. I think I saw on the documentation that it was saying that it was continuous collision function. And there's a function here that allows it to, it makes it easier to ray trace. Let me see the warning first. Probably you can use custom geometry by placing putting the load here. And I've seen some videos where they talk about Blender. So I think people probably create on Blender, then export as an object file or something, a Blender file, and then they load from here. Increase the radius. So this is the part that is kind of annoying, that you have to set these classes. It looks like the maximum is 100 as well. You have to set these classes, you have to put these classes and put the same values on them. I think the mesh should be either added first. And I think if we put different geometries, it's just gonna mess up the collision, but it's probably fine as well. So I think probably all I have to do is just change the way that I'm doing the functions there. And the problem is the position though. How do you, I guess, like this, if I move here, yeah, they both, so the positions are relative, so they're gonna move. There's also the label. I should be label 3D. Well, the label's gonna be easier to do it on the code, I think. So I'm just gonna, I think it's because of the color, maybe. Was something to do with the color, I think. That's I was trying to use the geometry. Maybe it doesn't matter. I guess I can set in the same way if I have as a child. So what I'm gonna do is just try to change there. Try to change first, and then I'll think about the rest. And didn't create a setter and getter for the collision shape. I guess I have to do that as well. I think on the constructor I should probably on the constructor I should, but I do remember that if I when I was doing the on the constructor, it's kind of slower because of the way that Godot works. So maybe on the notification ready or on the enter tree. I think on the enter tree probably. So I'm gonna put it on functions and then I'm just gonna call the functions from here to initialize collision shape and initialize the mesh. I'm just gonna do it from here. Let me think. I think doesn't matter if I put if I just leave it like this. And probably for this one I'm going to put here and then I'm just gonna put a default value there. Probably gonna be 5 or something like that. The sphere shape. What was? Hmm. Oh, this is far from the other one. Let's let me. I have to remember what do I need to put there. Oh, this one is the one that I've changed. That should be from the mesh. So you create the mesh, then like you have to instantiate because it's a reference, so this is gonna call the constructor of the class. Then this sets on the mesh instance 3D as the mesh. Then I instantiate the material, and then I set the material on the mesh. Then basically just setting initializing the mesh instance 3D, adding as a child, and then initialize the sphere. And then on the other ones, so now it puts this one here. And this is gonna make it so that they call both. Yeah, but I'm not really sure actually if this. The problem is I'm gonna initialize this from the graph3D. But maybe it's gonna run here. Not really sure if I can count on this though. Initialize the sphere. Initialize that. So the position is on the node 3D, so I didn't set. So the question is, when you set the position on the node 3D, will it update? But I think it will because the other ones are probably relative, like I seen there on the editor. So I think now the only thing I have to do is just. Yeah, but it is. I remember that it was kind of a problem. The problem is because of the radius. So the label has to be based on the position of the label has to be an offset from the sphere radius. Otherwise, you can't see because it's going to be inside of the ball. But I think that is probably fine. So this was probably mesh sphere. Mesh sphere. Oh, so I'm gonna put a condition there, just check if it doesn't exist. And I'm gonna put here as well. think I didn't miss anything. Now I just have to. I need to add the setters and getters for both the collision and the mesh. And I need to change the apply forces, I think. Apply gravitational force. This is the problem. I'm not really sure how I'm going to solve. The problem with this, I think, is that I need to update as well every time. Yeah, but if I apply directly, then maybe I don't need to do this. But I need to think about how to change this because then obviously I'm going to be, instead of doing like this, I'm going to call the functions there. And then I think it's going to be automatically applied, so I don't need to change the position. So maybe I don't need to call this function. Or I just leave the function like this, and then instead of setting the position, I just uh, apply force, maybe. Because now it's really the velocity, I think. The ends. So as far as I remember, you change the velocity along the way. Velocity and force both, I think. Because obviously the position is going to be a function of both. But I think it's apply velocity, apply force. Position. I guess I can. So I'm gonna change. I'm gonna change this once. Then I'm gonna compile and see if it works. If it works, then I'm going to add setters and getters for both the mesh and the collision. So let me see. So node position. Hmm. So is that in the force of the position of the body? And this might be a problem because I'm not really sure how it's gonna work. Because on the other, the apply force, you need both. So maybe I leave the way that it is now, and then only at the end I just get the final force, and then I use apply force on the end. So I store the values throughout the simulation on the GraphNode3D. Then at the end I apply on the rigid body. That might be better. I think that's probably easier. So maybe I'm gonna do this first, then I'll think about like if it works, then I'll think about whether or not it's worth it to change so that it works on the other way. Because then I could remove the variables and then I think I don't know if this makes sense because I don't remember the formulas very well. But like increase the velocity on the position, how does that translate to the force? Because maybe if I go into the, I don't even remember where I was getting this. Oh, I think I was getting from the front end. So let me go back to the, because I was pretty sure I'm going to see the code that I had on the front ends on the website, and I'm pretty sure that it was written as force. Oh, it's changing the position, not the. Hmm. The mass I should probably change as well, because the other one I think also has a mass. Probably changing slowly is probably better. Lost acceleration. Oh, it's just passing the. Oh, actually, it's just pass the position instead of adding there. So probably the correct translation should just pass. Also, this way is probably fine. And apply on the new position. Mass, if I remember correctly, it doesn't matter. Like it's not gonna calculate anything with the mass. Yeah. Oh, it's right here. Hmm. I think I'm gonna change the name as well because I'm pretty sure that the mesh instance has a, yeah, it has a, so maybe there's a conflict, but it's probably not the issue there. Oh, it's because of the pointer. That's the issue. I had the same problem yesterday, I think. Forgot to put the pointer. Oh, so yeah, I think when you inherit, you have to import to include, so I can forward declare there. I'm not really sure why. Oh, but I'm already. Hmm. Also, maybe it's because I'm including twice. No. I think it's not working, probably. If it is working, it's kind of weird. But I think it's probably not working. There's also something weird with the arrow sometimes. That the and it's because of the way that I'm doing the calculation of the size there. That's very weird. I think it's also because of the way that I'm setting the positions. There's something going on. And the values are weird here as well now. This bounce on the arrow is very weird. So I made the size of the arrow dependent on the curve length, and that's the issue I think, but it's kind of hard to solve. So I'm not really sure if I'm gonna think about this or not. But it's definitely a lot different, and it looks like it's spinning now. And so it's definitely because of the way that I'm setting the thing there. At least the shape and everything is the same. Oh, I think it's because of the. So I put a threshold, I think, for the distance should, so that the arrow takes the whole segment of the thing. Or maybe it's because of the once it reaches a threshold of the curve length, the arrow starts taking the whole space of the curve, and then it does the weird thing, and sometimes it gets locked in that thing, but I'm not really sure why. But this is obviously not very good. So maybe if I try something else, I have to see as well why is it messing up the, because it's not supposed to start with these values here. So let me see if I add another one. But it's probably gonna be the same thing. Yeah. So I do think that I changed there something, but I don't remember. Or maybe it's because I'm setting. But the problem is, like in the beginning, I have to set. I was gonna say custom physics. I'm not obviously the easiest thing to do is just to try another function there. But there's something obviously weird with the label. But I think it's because applying force is applying a torque at the end, and the torque rotates the sphere. So that's the issue. Maybe it's that add constant central force. I'm gonna try this one and then remove the position. I'm gonna see what is going on with the other one as well. Oh, I think that the issue as well is I do remember because the way that the simulation works, I got it from I got from VGS, I think, or something like that. And that's how I did the front end websites, and then I transferred that from the front end from my website that I created. I transferred from this to this here, and I think that the way that this works is that it resets the force every time because it applies the force here. So that's the issue. I'm setting here, but I'm not setting on the rigid body. So I think it's changing there because of that. Because this kind of resets the force. It creates like a. I don't understand very well why. I remember that the first time that I was reading this, I did understand, but now looking at it, it's kind of weird. But what I think it does is just creates a central point on the graph. So like it resets all the forces at each frame, so that they don't accumulate too much over they don't accumulate over time over the frames, because the other ones they just add additional. So like because the simulation is not the real world, obviously, there is no gravity or anything. So if you just apply the forces, the nodes get very far away. So you need something to keep them in the middle, let's say, of the scene or in the middle of the graph structure. But even if there is only one node, I think it would be like it is like a gravitational force that makes the bodies go to the center of the position of the graph structure. So that's the point of having the central gravity solver. But it is kind of weird that it has the force based on the body's position. And so I guess like it works because on the net is gonna be. I'm not really sure that makes sense because it is only applying the force. And this is the problem is if I apply here, I have to. I think on the net of everything is going to balance it out. But if you don't do all the other solvers, then maybe it diverges through infinity as well. What did it change here? If I put stat value here. I think that I changed the minimum size because of the problem with the icon bar or the flexible container, the dock that I want to put on the IDE scene because I was just it's the overflowing of the other stuff, but obviously it's not a very good solution. So the other solution that I thought about obviously is just to traverse all the children of the component that I want to put on the dock so that they have a minimum size that is the same as the minimum size from the dock so that it doesn't overflow. But I think it's not very good. But I think the best way to solve this is probably to look into the file system doc from the editor. But I'm not even sure if I'm gonna be able to solve by looking into the file system. But it's weird because I don't remember changing anything else. I changed the fonts as well, the font size. So maybe that's the problem. Yeah, font size. I don't think that is this class. So I changed both the font size on this one and on the other one. Weird that the values are also fucked up here. I don't think it's because it's canvas layer. Hmm. Right now I think it's exploding to infinity. So maybe if I leave the way that it was before and I think it's because of the stuff that I said about the the forces balancing out based on the different solvers. So Interesting. So this doesn't take into account the spring force as well. There's a force here. There's also here is gonna change the force on the body as well, I think. Changing the value there. So this should apply the force, then the other one. Yeah, it's because here, so the difference is here I'm setting the force in the beginning, so it just resets, and if I apply the force, it just accumulates on the other one. So if there's an equivalent to reset the force on the rigid body. I think it doesn't because it's gonna use the server to update. So since it doesn't have bodies, it doesn't. Yeah, so I think this way is probably better and is easier if I can do it like this. So I keep the variables on the other one, and then I just use the final value to update the rigid body. Probably I should set the mass as well. Or maybe I should remove the mass from here, so it's not, and just set the mass from there. The problem is like how I'm going to, because I need to be able to have like an interface. I I'm not really sure if it's better to have a variable to keep track of the states on this class or to use directly on the rigid body. I think I'm just gonna because I can call. If I want to do something with the mass on the other one, which I probably will at some point, I think I can just start from the graph 3D, so it doesn't matter that much, I think. Uh, 0.75. Maybe it's going on the wrong thing. There's one. Defaults. So the other thing I'm going to test is if I don't set the value instead of the physics ladder anymore. But I do think that there was a problem with this. Omitting twice. I think the problem is when I sat here, this is the reason why I was using the other one, I think. Because when I call this value changed, and then it's gonna set. It's supposed to have these values here as the default ones there. I'm not setting this as well. But I think it doesn't matter because it's a different event. It still didn't change. Hmm. It could be because there's a difference. There's a this but maybe not. Sometimes there's a difference in the value. Yeah, here it does have the difference. Maybe not actually because this one is the. I don't think it has the difference actually. So I'm not really sure what is going on. And now I think it is like exploding because it's not resetting there the force. Or maybe it's because of the weight I'm applying. So I can try a different force. I don't know why it's going on the 2D. I think it doesn't make sense for the error on the custom physics should be the font size. Like, so that should be something else. I think the only possible explanation is the physics slider. So maybe it is the it does look like the label is reflecting the value correctly there of the slider. So that should be the actual value of the slider. The function that updates both is this one. No, I think this one updates the function that updates both is is on the BM slider, I think, maybe. I don't remember though. It's been a long time. No, I think that's yeah, it is on the BM slider. So BM slider updates both. So maybe it is a problem on the BM slider. It's somehow changing the setting should be like this label here should be just the name, the description of the option. So by default it's option. And the value should be the slider. So I do like I remember there was a problem with this. I think is when like if you set there it's gonna call this function because it's gonna trigger the signal. So if I set the value here on the constructor, it triggers the signal and then calls this function again. And I think that there was a problem even before I did it like this, and it was something to do with this where because I'm setting the first value inside the constructor, there was something weird going on. Oh, it might be. Hmm. It's been 2 weeks since I began learning CPP, and it's been quite alright. Apart from the learning stuff, I haven't made anything yet, actually. I don't know what to make, any device. Huh. 2 weeks. Yeah, it depends on what you're interested on. But I think the easiest thing to build probably first is something that manipulates strings and inputs. But like this is not the route that I went with, but I think for me it made more sense to begin with the OpenGL and stuff like that. But I already had like a background on the other languages and I already had a vision in mind, like this stuff that I was trying to do. So it might be good to start like the problem if the problem with starting with OpenGL is that it's going to be very painful in the beginning, because especially because of the build system. So like if you don't have a lot of patience in the beginning and you want to see like results, then I wouldn't recommend uh, starting with OpenGL because it's going to take some time to like the it's very annoying to deal with CMake and all the other stuff, and you're gonna have to study a lot of stuff. But I think that yeah, if you do want to build something like on the GUI, something that shows stuff or game programming, something like that, then it's definitely a good thing to. Eventually, you're gonna have to learn anyway, so it might be better to start with OpenGL. And there's the OpenGL tutorials there. Not sure what's going on here. That's because of the script. So I think it's learn OpenGL. But I think that if you don't want to spend too much time, you just want to see some results, then you should try to do something on the command line. And maybe compilers, but it, like depends on the way that you think and like how much you know already, because it might be very difficult to understand. And it's kind of hard for me now because I already spent so much time learning that you kind of like you lose touch with what it's like to not know stuff anymore. So yeah, these tutorials are very good. It's like if you go from here, so try to open the maybe Raylib. Raylib is very good as well for people that are starting because I think it's very easy to build. So probably Raylib is the best actually. Yeah, probably Raylib is the best because you'll be able to quickly see stuff on the screen, and yeah, I think Raylib is probably the best thing to do. Like you don't have to do that much. All you have to do is just use the functions that they provide, and then you can see results on the screen. The most annoying part is building, but I think that on Raylib is also relatively easier than building on your own. It's still annoying, but easier. So I think I would start here, and they also have the Discord that's very good. And what I would do probably it was the same thing that did on the start, which is to like get this tutorials here and then like download the library, then get the tutorials, like build something very simple, and also the setting up the debugger also is very important. So setting up the debugger and then but first like build this stuff first because it's gonna make you more excited once you see stuff on the screen. Then after that, you figure out how to set up the debugger. And I did some streams explaining this stuff as well on VS Code on how to. But it is kind of annoying as well if you're gonna do it with CMake. But I think that I'm pretty sure that on the streams I try to explain how to set up, and then they also have on the documentation, VS Code documentation. It's not very good, so yeah. But I think on the streams I explain why it isn't very good, but it's basically something with the type that was annoying that I spent a bunch of time trying to solve at some point. But I think if you watch, if you build something first, then go like download the code, and then on VS Code you can press F12 to go to the definition. So if you put the mouse or the cursor on top of the function and you press F12, you go to the definition of the function. So here, for example, I have a class, I press F12, I go to the definition of the class. In this case, the constructor. But if you have a function like this, it's gonna go to the definition of the function. So after you copy the tutorials and see stuff on the screen, you go to the definition and start reading the source code and trying to understand how they created this. And then a bunch of questions are gonna come up. Then that's when you like read the tutorial to understand what each thing is, and probably use an LLM, ChatGPT, or Grok from Max. And after that, you figure out how to set up the debugger on VS Code, and then you go over with the debugger step by step to try to understand how it works. I think that's probably the best thing to do. But it depends on what you want to build. The other route would be to create something on the command line. So you create a simple file, C++ file, then you create a main function, and then you just learn how to do the command to compile the file with make. Which is like there's a bunch of tutorials, and you can use LLMs as well and search engines. Then you figure out how to get an input, and then how to do something with the inputs. Cybersecurity, interesting. Yeah, I don't know much about cybersecurity. But for cybersecurity, you're gonna need more low-level stuff. So you're gonna have to. There's also like this guy here is amazing. It's probably the best lectures I've found so far that to explain all the low-level stuff. Like this is the deeper version of the Ben Eater series. The Ben Eater is very good as well. But the other guy, this guy here, I watch some of these playlists, and I'm gonna watch this one again because it's so fucking good. But he explains on the very low level, and cybersecurity is going to be mostly understanding how machine code is connected to assembly, and how the hardware works with the operational system. So it's like lower level than C and C++. As far as I understand now, like most of the stuff is going to be. So probably for cybersecurity, you can create a server, for example, on C++. There's also another guy but I forgot which, but you can easily find, obviously. So like you can create sockets with C++ and like communications, and do the part that the browser does under the hood. You can do it manually, like a simple program that sends and parses messages that you receive through the wire. So that could be like an easy starting point. And then from that point, you watch all these lectures here, and then you get more into assembly and the other stuff. Also, low-level learning is very good. But from low-level learning, he's not gonna go too in-depth into the. As far as I've seen, like didn't see all his videos, but a lot of his videos, he's just gonna be on more like the higher range, let's say. I should target more people. This guy's more like the real stuff. Yes. So hardware and assembly. So the main keyword to understand is instruction set architecture. Instruction set architecture is the bridge between the hardware and the software, and also to understand like how the operational system is going to communicate with all the components on the hardware. So like how the CPU works, how the data pipelines work, which are circuits made to perform instructions. So like these kinds of things. And he talks about on the previous playlist that I watched from him, he talks about an exploit that they found on hardware that is like turning bits very fast on a memory location, for example. It would heat up the transistor, and it would make it fail the memory. And then from that point, it would allow attackers to send like an address of a function to a different place in memory, for example, and to execute their code. So like they would study the design of the hardware and like how the components connect, and then they would hijack the addresses based on this flipping of bits on the CPU, and then they would run their own code because they knew the target address that the operating system would go to if there was a failure, for example. I'm probably butchering a lot, but it's kind of like along those lines. So I assume that most of attacks are going to be like this, and on the high level, it's going to be based from Python. So I think most people are going to use Python because it's going to involve machine learning, and it's going to involve scraping and creating bots to navigate different paths on the websites. Also, I think probably blockchain is related, but not. Yeah. I don't know much about the cybersecurity industry, but I've seen like I watched like a couple of playlists about like the communication in the wires and like I forgot the name, but it is related to the cybersecurity things that they need there. Uh, it's basically most of the time is understanding the protocols of communication between lines and like how the information is being translated and encrypted in the wires. That's mostly, and also the design of the hardware and what are the problems with the design of the hardware. I think that's where the most of the attacks come from. But blockchain has some interesting stuff because of the encryption, obviously. So elliptic curves is the name of the algorithms, or like the algorithms all involve elliptic curves, and they do calculations on the elliptic curves by using modular arithmetic, which is taking the remainder of a division and then doing some stuff. So like the multiplication on elliptic curve is irreversible, I think, or something like that. And that creates a SHA-256, which is the key on crypto. And I think that is like it's probably moving towards this stuff. So at the core, the fundamental principle is going to come down to mathematics and the computational irreversibility of mathematics. So functions that is easy to compute but is irreversible. So yeah, it becomes a gate because there's no amount of computation you can do to reverse the process. So like, I think you lose information. Not sure if you lose information, but yeah, something along those lines. And obviously, I think that blockchain is very important because it's like probably the only direction that I see to increase the chances of survival with artificial intelligence because of everything that is happening today nowadays with the like dictators trying to censor speech and like the shifting power that is happening just because of technology, but I'm not really sure how it's gonna work. But I do think that probably the future, like if we survive, is gonna be like it's all about the line of how information shapes the power in a network, I think. So blockchain is obviously gonna be probably. I think the current state of the blockchain is just a psyop. It doesn't work because just taking power from governments and putting on companies, but the root of the issue is not solved. Because regardless of which side you're on, the abstraction of the markets always win, which is supply and demand, which is basically hacking the limbic system to gain more power. So that's how things are working now. You have this abstraction that is running on the background, and it makes people go to either one of the sides because that's how it gains more power. because it increases engagement and is basically hacking the limbic system by preying on everyone's sins to gain more power. And the issue is not the market, because the market is just a reflection of how the hardware of human body is running on space and time. So the hardware of the human body is not scalable on space and time because it creates this unbalanced network that is hijacked by the market economy. So like the whole incentive of companies is to exploit your limbic system, which is all your primitive desires, and basically turn you into a crack addict because that's how they gain more power. And that's all related to the flow of information between nodes on the network. Because that's what money is basically. So the computation of the market economy, when run through the human body, human hardware, which is the body, creates a vicious cycle that creates this polarization. So the more technology you have, the more power you have, the more polarized things become, because there is no the unifying force between humans is not strong enough to contain the power, because we scale based on the Dunbar number, which is around 150 people, which is the tribe mentality. So the division between countries and immigration, stuff like that, is a consequence of how the human hardware creates societies and makes us organize ourselves. So like the shape of the shape of the borders is determined by the human hardware, because it's all related to space and time. And I think that the future probably, and trying to solve this problem, is going to be related to the blockchain, because it allows you to, but this is the issue and the challenge, is figuring out like both on the hardware level and on the, like it has to be on the infrastructure, and that's kind of the issue. So the Nash equilibrium of the network has to be done in such a way that it swallows the markets and then it changes the balance of power by changing the frequency of the computation and overpowering those that are not part of the network. And I think that this is the problem. This is I was thinking about the other day as well, which is that like that's the fundamental problem, because if you create a model from a company, then I think that the chances of the model becoming unaligned or unbalanced is greater, because it's running through the substrate of the market economy, which is like this abstraction that is trying to hijack the limbic system, which is the primitive brain. So the force of the market is stronger than the force of the model, and the model gets swallowed by the market because of the dominant Nash equilibrium strategy, which is the arms race. So the structure of the model is going to be regulated by the supply and demand, which means that it's more likely that the model is going to create the relationship between the objective function and its behavior, which is the geometrical structure of the weights and biases, is going to be shifted towards hacking the human body, which perpetuates the vicious cycle. So the problem is like on a different level, is the network itself and the structure of the incentives that shapes the model, and not the way around. But it's all about the line of the gravitational force of each one, because you can also argue the other way around, where you can have a model that is so powerful that it captures the microeconomy and then it changes the nature of the cycle once it has enough power. So that could be possible as well. But I think it all comes down to how do you determine the boundary between what you perceive to be yourself and what you perceive to be the environment, because that's going to dictate how the computation shapes space-time when you have a network of nodes. Fuck. Yeah, pretty complex. Obviously, I'm not really sure if I'm right about everything, but I do think it makes a lot of sense. So that's obviously related to cybersecurity because the whole point is to prevent, like the network has to be unhackable. So, and I think that the like cybersecurity and encryption in a nutshell is gonna play off on the relationship between the complex plane and space-time, I think, because it's on the boundary of computation. And I think that what defines space-time is computation over a reference frame of experience. So like encryption, like a good way to think about encryption is like the walls on digital space is the things that determine the geometrical shape of abstraction. So the digital space, which is the internet, is like a you can view it as a different dimension, but it's basically interconnected with space-time because it's basically the same thing. The boundary between the two is experience. So the shape, the geometrical shape of abstraction is determined by the encryption because the encryption is going to be the wall, is the point at which you can't compute anymore, like is irreversible. So it's at the boundary of perception because computation is perception. So becoming good at cybersecurity is understanding the geometrical shape of abstraction, I think. So yeah, basically how encryption works on the network. I think that from first principles, that's what comes down to. And I think the easiest exploits people find are probably by navigating the is because like the bigger something scales, the more entry points you have on the geometrical shape of abstraction that the website creates to handle all the data, and then it becomes easier to find the vulnerability. That coupled with the hardware structure and the hardware design, and I think that probably most of the attacks are going to be like that, either by searching a wide range and then trying to find like what the weakest link, or by changing the hardware somehow physically, and then based on that, finding a loophole. Oh, no worries, man. So now it seems that it is. Yeah, I think that it is balancing, but the problem is it's kind of weird, still. But the problem is gonna be the problem is the spring force. I think this is the spring force that is exploding the other two. And it's still kind of weird. There's a problem here. I think the problem is probably the thing that exploded there. Yeah, so yeah, this is a warning that I put on the bind set algorithm, this the stuff that divides the space. But it's not a big deal, I think. Just because the nodes exploded. Maybe it's the sign that I have to change. I think that's I'm probably gonna have to go over with the debugger to see what is going on with the values. This one I basically got from the editor and then I just changed some stuff to make it work. But yeah, I roughly understand how it works, but I didn't spend too much time. But it basically draws everything manually by calling these functions from the canvas item. Yeah, but I think that the set value comes from the range because this class inherits from range. So I'm not really sure. Maybe I should try to comment out the label thing, the label offset that I put there, and then see if it works. Oh, it might be because of this. Hmm. Oh, so it's getting the font size from the thing. Yeah, I think that this is the issue. Like maybe because I'm setting the font size on the physics slider, then it doesn't update when it changes the value. Might be because of this. But I'm not really sure if that makes. Because I think that the settings are only for the label that is not related to this stuff. I'm just gonna go over with the debugger problems easier. It might be because of the setup. Hmm. There's something weird going on with the ones on this spring. I think that it might be because of the because I'm setting the values in the constructor, so the editor doesn't set them. But it's kind of weird because they're set. I'm setting them here, so probably the easiest thing to do is just change the or just yeah, but it's because the settings is just for the label that doesn't matter. So So I set here again. So maybe if I put negative on both of them, or the last thing I'm gonna try is just switch. I think that a very big challenge is figuring out how to differentiate humans. Like the problem is, I don't think the problem is differentiating humans from bots. The problem is finding the like a uh, balanced state, let's say. Because you can think about a human being as a bot, like if people call NPCs. So like if you have someone that doesn't think a lot and they just like talk about the information that they receive, then they're and like humans are very similar to AI and bots as well. So even the people that think, they're just transforming the data that they receive from the environment. Obviously, there can be something else about consciousness, but I think that even if like the thing it might be because of the water. So the structure of the water might be like the antenna for consciousness, which means that AI wouldn't be able to be conscious. But yeah, maybe that's the case. But it's kind of weird because like in one way you do have like a range. You need to have like it makes more sense to be a range. So like you start at zero consciousness and then you end up at 100%, and somewhere along the way it seems that something is conscious. It makes a lot more sense. But in another way, paradoxically, it has to be like an absolute because everything is the same thing. So like all distinctions are relative. So like for it's kind of weird for the boundary to be water because you are already parts of the thing you are perceiving. So the geometrical shape of water is well like is gonna be relative to everything else. But it might be true because of the range thing. So it might be the case that consciousness can only be spawned through water. But even if it is, like if you have something that is sufficiently similar, then it's gonna become very hard to distinguish. So like the issue with bots is not the bots, is the like pushing narratives that lack balance and in the purpose of getting more power, which is self-destructive because even if you win, you create an environment where you can sustain yourself because you're not seeing how the structure of the whole creates the shape of your body. So these things are connected. Yeah, so the problem is figuring out so like what is the balance. And uh, the issue is if you go too much, like if you try to enforce a method of verification to see, distinguish what is human from what is not by getting like biometric data or stuff like that, like it's a very slippery slope thing because the issue is on the infrastructure, I think. But then like how do you solve the infrastructure? That's the problem. Because it's gonna get corrupted and then it's gonna become a vicious cycle anyway. And then not only you didn't solve the problem of verifying what is human and what is not, you created a situation where it's 1984 and you have no freedom. So that's the problem. But I think that as long as you had like if you were able to create something that is it doesn't matter how many things like the like the line between what is allowed and is not allowed is calculated based on the computation of the of space-time in relationship to the impulses that the server gets. So like so like in this case, denial of a service wouldn't be possible because like you would have on the algorithm or something that determines a threshold that creates the distinction of what is an identity that is sustainable in an environment than one that it isn't, and you would track that based on patterns and fingerprints, and then you wouldn't need to have access to human data because it wouldn't matter whether or not the things on the website are human or not, because the structure of the thing that uh, shapes the network is balanced. And I think it's the same thing with freedom of speech. So you can have one way you can think about like the answer is not full censorship, obviously, and not full freedom of speech. There's a line in the middle, and the challenge is computing the line in the middle without getting to a slippery slope where either side gets too much power, and then it becomes self-destructive. Because even if you win the game, over the long term, it's not sustainable because it goes against the nature of space and time. That's the problem. But I do think it might be possible to create, like based on the infrastructure, you create something that it's balanced, and then yeah, then it wouldn't matter if you had bots because the yeah, but obviously I'm not really sure. So now it's working. Nice. Yeah, but it looks like it is gonna explode again. Yeah, so they're getting very very close, and then they explode. That's the issue. Mm. So one has to be different than the other, I think. Or maybe just, but it does make sense to implement. So I'm gonna go over with the debugger to see what is going on with the thing, but I'm gonna try to reverse. Last thing that I'm gonna try. And I'm gonna have to spend, maybe I'll try another force. Yeah, so that's one that I'm gonna see, but I think it's probably not gonna work because don't see why it would. I just need to read the documentation thing. Oh, I remember that this is a function that they tell you to use, integrate forces. The last thing I'm gonna do, then I'm gonna stop streaming, and I'm going to step over on off stream, and then I'm probably gonna watch videos again and read the documentation again to understand more how to change the things on the rigid body 3D. And I might do it in a different way as well. I might have to change more stuff there. So instead of adding the forces, setting the forces on the GraphNode3D on the member variable, I have to apply them directly on the physics thing. Not really sure if that's necessary because either way I'm gonna be applying them. Because on the other way I'm just applying at the end. So I'm accumulating the force on the. Yeah, but maybe this is the problem actually. Because I'm applying the wrong force. So it might be because of this. So this is the last thing that I'm gonna try. I'm gonna set the force again. Oh, now this might be another thing. I have to set the velocity as well. And different parts. Maybe I should be running this before as well. But I think, and maybe the spring force should be done before. I think that I should do this before probably. The reason why I did it in this order is because that's the order that I was doing the other one. But I think this probably make more sense because I'm gonna apply the force here. Oh, I'm not applying the force anymore here. I'm just setting. So maybe if I do this. And maybe it's working now. See if it's gonna explode. Yeah, I think now it's probably working. So I'm gonna test. So I think it exploded before because the other stuff. Then I changed the values of the spring force there, and then it messed it up. I want to test the way that I have there, but I'm gonna do this off stream. So since it looks like it is working, and then I'm gonna step over to see what happened with this custom physics component with the values, initial values here, and try to fix this. Then after I do this, what I'm gonna try to do is to already trying to implement the ray tracer on the camera, but it looks like it is not working. That's probably the way that is like it's supposed to print through and print some other stuff. If when I click, if it is inside a node, it should print that. So it looks like it is not working. So I have to see what is the correct way to ray trace on a rigid body 3D. Then based on the ray trace, update the position or update. I'm gonna have to see how to do that as well because they say you can't set a position, but maybe for these kind of things it's better to set a position even if it's not part of the physics. So I'm gonna ask LLMs as well and search on the search engine. Just see. how to do the dragging of the nodes. That's the next step that I wanna achieve. And after I solve this stuff, I'm probably gonna come back to finishing the IDE layout thing by studying the file system doc and then trying to understand how they prevent the file system from overflowing on the other panel. And also I'm gonna have to implement probably the file system doc there as well. And that's next things that I'm gonna do probably. Not sure when I'm gonna come back, but I'm gonna continue to do this playlist, no, this steps here. So see you next time.